All right, welcome back. We are COMP1115, Game Programming 1, in the fall 2025 semester at Georgian, and it's week 8, part 1 of our broadcast and recording together. Happy Halloween. It is that day, right? So today what we're going to be talking about is methods with parameters a little bit more, and an intro to Windows forms. Last time we were together before the exam, we talked about the console class and strings and string methods, enumerations, which tripped some of you up, and some debugging I gave you guys as homework, and same thing as readmes. Today we're going to be talking about methods, like I said, and I'm also going to be talking about how to use Windows forms in a lot of details. But first, what I want to do is I want to talk about some stuff about the exam. All right, some people had trouble with, which I've been going through. I shared some of this with you guys, some people that kind of met with me ahead of time, but I want to talk about variables again, because I think still people have this issue with this idea, right? I know this is silly, but I really want to talk about it with you guys. Remember what a variable is, okay? I know I feel almost terrible even saying anything like this, but here's what it is, right? You have a few parts to the variable, right? You have the type, integer, float, double, decimal, whatever. The name, some kind of assignment operator will assign a value to it, and in this case, because it's an integer, we're assigning an integer literal. That's what it evaluates to. And basically what we do is we have a box, and we store, think about this box as a memory location, and we store the value inside the box. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. Now, why am I showing you this? Because it's a build-up. Let's wait for a second, okay? So then we can do something like this, where people still don't understand what this is. This thing is an expression, okay, which means it needs to be evaluated, just like math. You have some kind of formula, you plug in some numbers, and then it evaluates. Expressions are always evaluated, right? Even something that looks like this, okay? You can do something like int my number, and you can do this funky stuff with bedmass, okay? That's totally fine. It evaluates to 14, and then 14 is stored inside that box instead of whatever was there before. Okay, so that is definitely a thing. I want to talk about this. Let's step it up a little bit. You can also do things with, something that looks like this, which is, as an example, a string. Strings are another type, right? And you can store a value like rich inside the box, right? The box being the memory location, right? Nice and easy so far? Nice review? Aha. And then we get to arrays. And why am I showing you this? Because, my friends, this is where a lot of you guys fell short in terms of understanding, okay? I want you guys to think about arrays different ways, but one way I always like to think about it when I was starting off was think about them as like, houses on a street, okay? I like houses on a street, that idea, right? That's an analogy, right? But each house has an address. 0, 1, 2 are the addresses of the houses, right? And in this case, there's one name for all of the houses, right? We're referring to all of the houses in this case as my names, okay? This basically shows you how many houses. I'm allocating 3 memory locations. Remember, back over here, we have a memory location we store stuff in. Same idea with arrays. We're storing, except we're actually allocating 3 memory locations, 1, 2, 3, okay? Can someone open the door for Marco, please? Because he's locked up somehow. This door today is.
Where is he?
He's on the back door there. So 1, 2, 3, right? And of course we do zero-based indexing, which means we do zero-based counting, and we start counting at 0, 0, 1, 2. All right? It's just a way of counting. We can count in different ways. In C-influenced languages across the world, okay, we always count with 0, starting at 0, okay, when it comes to arrays and memory locations. Very simple. You can definitely assign values to an array like this, okay, this is the long form, or you can do something like this, which is a collection expression. We talked about this last time, okay, so this is kind of stuff I'm just reviewing. And again, you can see 0, 1, 2, right? So up to here, you guys are mostly good, most people, all right? But then we get into some funky stuff, not this part. But when we come to for loops, people have some issues. They're like, wait a minute. How do I do a for loop? People are still confused with for loops, right? Remember what happens with for loops, right? You have some kind of counter. It could be named I or index or whatever. That counter goes up Zero starts at 0 in this case, and then as long as, this is the condition, as long as the counter is less than the length of the array, in this case 3, right? As long as it's less than, it increments the counter at the end of the loop. That's what happens, okay? So again, when we start thinking about this, my names, which is the array of string array, 0 is where it would start, and that's whatever you enter. So you can enter whatever value you want, right? And then it would go to 1, and then 2, and then when it became 3 at the end, it would come up here and go, wait, is 3 less than 3? No, 3 is equal to 3, so it fails, and it doesn't do that next loop, okay? So some people got this idea, some people didn't. But then we get into something that looks like this, okay? And people get confused. They're like, wait a minute, I have some skills. And I want to allocate a bunch of stuff like this, like martial arts and range combat and pilot and protective gear. It's just strings, man. Okay, that's all they are. They're still array elements. That's what we call them, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's what they are, right? And if I want to access a specific spot in the array, I can just allocate it here in square brackets. So if I say skills 2, that means it's pilot. See that? Skills 2, pilot, because 2 is the address, okay? And then, if I say something like current skill is equal to skills 2, I'm making a copy from the array into, let's say, a string. Okay, so then it copies from this memory location into this memory location. Why am I showing you this? Because, my friends, this is where you guys got mixed up when it came to the exam. Okay, some people had these really weird ideas about how arrays work, right? And your ideas are wrong. Okay, some of you. Okay. So that's why I put this together. And then we came to something that looks like this, multi-dimensional arrays, in this case, 2-dimensional array. I want to think about arrays as houses on a street. So when we have a multi-dimensional array like this, it's like rooms in the house. Okay? If array locations are houses on a street, then if I have 2-dimensional arrays, I have multiple rooms in that house. And that's what we're doing here. So example, you can see here that array location 0 has 2 rooms, 0 and 1. Even though it says 1 and 3, there's only 2 locations. Location 0 and location 1. Location 0 and location 1. People did not understand this, right, on the exam. They don't get it, how it works. And so I've listed it here. So the way it works is the first square bracket refers to the house on the street, 0, 1, 2, 3 in this case, right? And the second square bracket refers to the room in the house, room 0 or room 1, okay? And this is where you guys, some of you fell down, okay? So just letting you know, I wanted to review this with you because some of you had lots of trouble with this idea. Questions around this? I know. This is, this looks difficult. Guys, this is baby stuff, right? I'm going to tell you right now. This is like what we've done so far up to this this point right now. We've used toy programs, right, to get you to understand the basics, the fundamentals of how we do programming. I'm sorry to say it that way, but this is like really fundamental stuff. You need to understand arrays, because if you don't understand arrays, then when we build more complex constructs in the future, if we do data structures of high complexity, like for example, when we get to AI in the second year, right, you'll be like, what's going on, right? Because this is like way more complex than this, okay? So please review. That's all I'm saying. Please don't leave this if you don't understand something. There's some great, tutorials online you can find. A lot of stuff. Fill in your gaps, all right? Because what's going to happen is it's just going to get more challenging and complex, right? I mean, I only have a certain amount of time with you. Don't just think about my in-class exercises as the only thing you need to know to practice. There's lots of stuff out there to read and practice. And again, like I said before, to be a programmer, you need to program. Make something, right? Start, on your own on the side. Whenever you can find the time, do something. Make a calculator program, where you can learn a lot by just doing that. All right. So today I want to talk about methods again, but officially. Last time we did a bit of a preview and we kind of slapped it together and we said there was a local function. So I want to talk about methods. We kind of previewed methods in lesson 4. That's what they were. We just called them local functions because they weren't quite a method. We said that a method was outside the main method in the program class. That's what it was, right? But if you have a method inside of a method, that method that's inside is actually a function, a local function. is what we called it. Let's talk about what the anatomy of a method, if we were going to look at what they are, right? We have a couple of things, okay? A method is a reusable piece of code. That's what it is, some block. Inside the code block, which is the curly braces, you have a bunch of code that gets reused, and you can call upon it as you like. The first one, the first part out here, static, don't worry about that word right now. It just means you can call this method outside of main, right, and not have to worry about it. That's what static means for you right now, okay? Then you have this, which is the return type. And void means it returns nothing. If there was another value in here, like int or string or whatever, it would return that type of value. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Then there's the method name itself, followed by the parameter list. In this case, there's nothing. There's no parameters, all right? We don't have anything inside of here. Inside the curly braces, you have a bunch of statements, one or more statements that trigger when you call the method, all right? So if I call the method, then all the stuff inside the method triggers. It executes. It runs. Okay? Are we good so far? Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. So, let's say I call the method name counting. If I call that, it would start, and let's say inside the curly braces, I'm going to count from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
If I called that method name, it would count from 0 to 10.
It would. Yeah, it would basically execute all the commands inside the curly braces. Okay. So, basics, like I said. Let's get to this part. So imagine I have a situation like this, right, where I have a main and I have this method called getString. Okay. GetString, notice static is here, it lives outside of main now. It's not a local function anymore, it's a method, all right? Methods live outside of main. And you can see here, I define it. By the way, methods can be defined anywhere in your code, and as long as they're defined and they have a body like this, then they can be called. Order doesn't matter, okay? You can order the method anywhere you like, above main, below main, and so on, no problem. So here we have getString, and so getString basically returns hello world. Why? Again, if we look at the return type is a string. The name of the method is getString, and it does not have any parameters. The parameter list is empty again. Okay, that's what we look at, right? So the return statement returns a string literal hello world, right? And so when we call a method, here's where we call the method. We can also say that we invoke the method, okay? I invoke it. I feel like an invoker, like a magician, okay? I'm like going, whoo, hey, method, And that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm saying, hey, getString, do your magic and return something. That's what we're doing. Because we have this equal sign, this thing, getString, evaluates to a string. That's what, remember we talked about evaluation? The right side of the equals is an expression, even if it's a method. Let me say that again, all right? The right side of an equal sign is an expression, right? It needs to be evaluated, which means when I call this method getString, right, from here, it jumps from here to here. It does whatever the method wants you, whatever the method says here in the curly braces, and then when we have a return statement, it returns back to here from the jump from the calling code, exactly in this location that it was called from. So if I call it here, again, it almost does this like jumps here, does this stuff, and then comes back, all right? And when it comes back, it returns this. So hello world now gets sent into my string. That's what happens. Because it returns it. It is a string. That's what this method returns, okay? And so when I print it out, it's gonna say hello world. Clear? If you're not clear about this, this is like the again, lowest level, guys, we're talking about. This is level 0. If you're gonna be a character in D&D, if there's such a thing as level 0, which by the way, we played with level 0 characters way back in the day. Yes, this is level 0, okay? It's not level 1, yes.
Does it only do that like once, or can it do it itself?
It only calls, because you only call the method one time, right? You can call the method multiple times, right? Remember, methods are places of, that include reusable code, right? If I want to call getString multiple times, then I can call that method over and over again on different lines of code somewhere else, okay? It doesn't have to be called once. That's why we make methods. Actually, there's two reasons why I make methods, right? One reason is there's a bunch of code there that I want to use over and over again. That's one reason. The other reason is I compartmentalize my code. Instead of it being a monolithic program, a massive program that's like really, really big, I can break my program down into smaller chunks, right? So that's another reason why I make methods, okay? All right, so return value. So the way it works is return type, this is what it works like, the function name, and the return value. And one thing that you have to think about is whatever the return type is, it must match with the return value, okay? So we're going to talk about that in a second. So, so here's an example that we have. So one thing that we have to talk about is as soon as you hit a return statement in a method, it immediately interrupts what you're doing and goes back to where it was called from, okay? Doesn't matter if it's in a for loop, doesn't matter what you're doing in that code. As soon as you call that return statement, it goes, I'm thinking about anyone play Magic the Gathering? It's an interrupt, okay? It stops what you're doing, and all of a sudden, poof, you're doing something else, all right? That's what it is, okay? It stops you from doing what you're doing. And so here's an example of another method, getVal, right? GetVal returns a double, right? And then we have a local variable called checkVal. I called it a local variable because it lives and dies inside this context, right? Inside the curly braces. Remember, it's a local variable. It does not exist out in the wild, just here in this method, okay? If this value, let's suppose checkVal, it's like I said here, it's assigned somewhere else, okay? I just put it here so you can see it. But let's suppose it can have different values, okay, as an example. And let's suppose checkVal is 10, okay? If checkVal is less than 5, it fails this and returns 3.2, right? If checkVal is 3 is less than 5, it returns 4.7. Notice that there are two paths, two possible returns, right, depending on the if statement, okay? But there's always at least one return value, and that is, my friends, very important when you have a method that returns something, okay? So again, if this is not void, if you declare a method and this is not void, you must return something that is a double. You have no choice. If you don't, your code will not compile. It will not work. Okay. The other thing that I want to point out is if you have something like this, this will never compile properly. Why? Because it's an if statement, and this if statement may fail, and there might not be a return statement, so the compiler doesn't like that and it says, sorry, I'm not compiling this code because it's unsafe. That's what it does. Yeah.
So if you set it as static void, can you return anything you want?
No, you can't return anything.
Oh, okay.
Static void means I can't return anything. I'm not returning anything, right? If you actually have a return statement inside of a static void, it just basically exits the code. That's all it does. All right, so this is illegal, right? And why? Because it might return something like not all code paths return a value. Because, for example, if this check fails, you don't have a return, right? Like, for example, if checkVal is 10, then what happens? There's no return value. That means you're not satisfying the requirement to return something that you've said. When you make the signature, and that's what this is, the signature of a method, and the signature of a method includes the following: its return type and its parameter list, okay? If the signature, and of course the name, if the signature of the method says that you're returning a double, you're making a pact, okay, with the demons of the machine, okay? That's what you're doing, okay? And what you're basically saying is, I promise I'm going to return something. You must return something if you say that, okay? If you don't return something, your code will not compile. Simple as that, all right? So just keep this in mind. All right. Did I make it double? I did. All right, parameters. Let's talk about parameters a bit. So parameters have a bit of a parameter list. You can have parameter type and then with parameter name, and it'll be an unlimited list. You can have unlimited parameters, okay? That's what it is. So you can have a return type, the function name, and a bunch of parameters in a big list. Now there's a difference between parameters and arguments, okay? And sometimes programmers use them interchangeably, right? Some people say argument list. Don't be caught up with the words argument, okay? It's not an argument that you and I are having, okay? It's not that kind of argument. Parameters and arguments mean the same thing, kind of. It depends on when you use them. The parameters normally refer to a list of inputs that I want to have inside of a method, that I declare inside the method signature. Arguments are the things I'm passing into the method call when I'm calling it. So for example, when I'm invoking the method, if it needs it has a bunch of parameters, I pass in arguments. Okay? Let me give you an example. Here is a method called product, right? It returns a double, and I take in two parameters. A double, that's parameter 1, and a double, that's parameter 2. It returns parameter 1 times parameter 2. That's what it does. The return, because this is on the right side, it evaluates what this is and returns the evaluated number, which is a double, back out of the function. I want you to think about this as inputs and output. For methods inside of C#, I want you always to consider that there's only one output. Okay, you can't have more than one return. I can't return 5 things. I can only return one thing. But I can have multiple inputs. All right? So I can have a bunch of inputs. I can plug in a bunch of stuff, but I only have one output at the end. For now. All right? There's other ways you can get multiple outputs, but for now, this is the way we do it. Okay? Clear about this? So if I was to call this method, let's say I'm going to just add some more code here. And let's suppose I had a method call. Let's say I have a double, let's say, and that double was called my number, right? And I said something like my number is equal to product, right? And I passed in values, like for example, I don't know, 5.0 and 3.2, right? Then these values here are arguments. I'm passing in 2 arguments to the parameter list that I'm having here in my methods. Does that make sense? So I'm passing in 2 actual double literals. That's what they are. These double literals are stored here, and these values, param1 and param2, are local variables that are able to be used inside the method. Okay, that's what they have. That's what happens. They're local variables. Okay. So yes.
So product is just in parameter 1 then? Or is it
Product is the name of the method.
Yeah, but how you did 5.0 and 3.2, that's stored just in parameter 1?
5.0, the comma separates the parameters. So 5.0 gets sent into parameter 1, and 3.2 gets sent into parameter 2.
Okay, I thought you were saying it just goes in.
Yes.
Okay, so then when you return it, you're doing basically 5.0 times 3.2.
First, you do the evaluation inside the method. You evaluate it here first, and then when the return statement returns, it returns back out to this point where we called. This is the invoking location, the calling location, and this whole thing evaluates to 5 times 3.2. Right, and then it takes this information and stores it inside of my number. Let's make it a simple number. Instead of 5 and 3.2, let's just do this. Right, 5 times 3 is 15. So the number that gets returned from product, the product method, is 15.0, and it gets stored into my number. Does that make sense? Again, 2 parts to using a method. One is the method call. Okay, this is the method call itself. It jumps to the method. Right, the method has a signature. It's this part right here. This is the method signature. Right, the method signature is comprised of the name of the method, product, the return type, and its parameter list. That's the method signature. Okay. Yes.
But if you're already setting the number at the top, you even need the bottom code. Can you just do product 5 times 3 and that's it?
You mean here?
At the top, where my number equals product.
Yes.
5 times 3 and then none of the other stuff matters?
I mean, if you, like 5 times 3, what do you mean? I don't understand.
There, product 5.0 and then times.
No.
3.0?
No. No. No.
Okay, so let's say I didn't want,
Huh?
let's say I didn't want to multiply it. Let's say I wanted to add it. Would I change my double equals product 5.0, comma 3.0, or would I just?
We can have another method. Let's make another method, okay? So here, let's do it. And again, I know I'm doing it here, and I'm not doing it in Visual Studio, but there's a reason for this, okay? think about this as our little whiteboard. Okay, so I'm going to get another, let's make another method. Okay, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go in here. And let's make this method add. Okay, so I'm adding to, thing. Or sum, we'll call it sum actually. How about that? Sum. And we're going to take two parameters. They're exact same names. Doesn't really matter, does it? But instead of doing a multiply, we do a plus. Right? Okay, so now if I use sum in here instead, let's use sum, right? Now what is it going to be? What is going to be stored in my number? 8, right? So in your mind, I want you to think about this. When I call the method sum, it jumps to this location. It passes in the parameters from here into here, individually, okay? And they have to be in the exact order that they were named. So for example, if I have a double, they have to be in that order, okay? I could also have something weird, like, like maybe another method that has not just double and double, but something else too, like a string, right? When you have those things, you have to pass them in the order that they're made. And I want to give you an example of that in the next thing, okay? Let's do some more complex stuff. Let's talk about some, a more complex example like max value. Okay, here's one, yeah.
In the previous slide, since we're getting a value and not a void, couldn't we just use the method as my number?
So, sorry, I don't understand the question. What do you mean?
So it isn't a void, our method, it's a double.
It's not returning a number, it's returning a double. It's returning a double. That's the return type, right? So the return type, that's how I want you to say it, is this. That's the return type, right? The return type is not void, and because it's not void, it must return something, okay? In this case, it must return a double. Must return a double, right?
Okay, so on the top part,
Yeah.
when actually I'm like recalling it in main,
Okay.
can I just input like sum 53
Uh-huh.
and not like store it in my number?
You could. You mean you want to do one of these, just like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then this wouldn't do anything. If you remember, it's going to return something somewhere, and if it's not returning anything, it's just going to be literally, it'll do this thing, but then when it comes back to this, it won't store it anywhere. It'll be lost. It'll be gone. The return, the thing you're returning, is going to be gone to the bit bucket in the sky. It's going to be gone. It won't have any value. Like you're not doing anything with it, right? Until you store this somewhere, it's going to be gone. All right? Does that make sense? So
you couldn't call it after that?
no, because remember the method doesn't persist. Once this method's been called, it generates this equation every single time. It redoes everything inside the curly braces every single time it's called. It doesn't remember, right? It's not something that it remembers what you did. It doesn't remember anything. Once you do it one time and you call it again, it does all that stuff again. Like as if it's regenerating, the method body's regenerated after it's been called. How about that? All right, so this is an idea. Let's go into something more complex, like this, okay? So let's talk about this one as a little bit more. And again, I'm writing in the side business here for your reading pleasure, okay? Here's more a complicated example. We have my array, right, which is an array of integers. That's what we're making, right? And we have a mixed array of integers with random integer location values, right? Some of them are the same. Okay, you can see like 2 and 2 are the same, right? But here we've declared an integer array of some amount, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to figure out which is the maximum value that's stored inside of the array. So I have a very practical method called max value. I want to pass in the entire array. So here, that is the parameter. The parameter is the array that I'm passing in. Even though my array, as an example, is an array I'm declaring here in main, my parameter has a different name, int array. When I pass my array into my max value, then I'm passing it by value. We'll talk about that. And so int array has all of these values in here. I'm copying all these values in to my function, into my method, okay? So more complex example, right? So max value, we can start max value as int array 0. So the first value, or the 0th value of the array. So we start off at 1, right? And then we kind of count. And we start off, notice we're starting off at 1, not at 0. I already have 0. 0 is 1. That's the value, right? So I'm saying, starting off at 1, where my index is less than the array length. So my array length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? While my index is less than 10, increment at the end of the for loop. Okay, good. If my int array index, in this case 1, is greater than max value, so 8 is greater than 1, if that's true, and it is, max value is now equal to whatever that value was. It's equal to 8. So now max value is 8 in this case. Loop. Increment to 2. 2 is less than length, yes. Cool. Okay, 2. Is 3 greater than 8? No. Is 6 greater than 8? No. Is 2 greater than 8? No. Is 5? I'm going to keep going until I get to 9. 9 is greater than 8, so this value here becomes max value, and the other values are lower, and so at the end of this whole loop sequence, it returns max value, which is 9. So 9 gets returned and placed into max value up here. So we can say the maximum value in my array is 9. Yes?
So when you're putting your array into the parameter,
Mhm.
remember, even though they're named differently,
Yeah.
you'll still remember it just because
It's copied. All these values here is copied into this new array.
you like names are
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, because, so basically this array here doesn't get modified. Remember, arrays are immutable. They can never change. Once they've been made, they're like that forever, right? The number of values they have in them and everything else is those numbers of values, right? And when I pass in this array in here, all I'm doing is copying this array. I'm copying this array into this array. I'm almost like declaring a new array called int array. Yes?
Why did you make a new one called int array instead of use my array when it's still technically the same inside?
Because I don't want to modify my array. I want to just use it. I want to use the values. Yeah.
Okay, so if you had like multiple integer arrays,
Uh-huh.
how are you, like, because you're renaming it since it's immutable, how would the code know the difference between the two?
Well, you have a name here, my array, and you have this one is in only this array here only exists for max value.
Okay.
It doesn't exist anywhere else. It only exists here inside this function.
So if I was going to use my second one, I would have to make a whole new.
Well, okay, let's do it. So here, let's make another array. Let's suppose I wanted to do it again. I'm probably going to mess this up, but it's okay. And let's say I make a new array, new int array, and instead of calling it my array, let's name it your array. There it is, your array. Right? And let's say your array is also an integer array, but now the values are different. So we'll say 10, and we'll say, I don't know, 7, 5, 11. We won't make that many. We'll just make these, okay? So it can be a different size, like this, right? So your array is 10, 7, 5, and 11, okay? And then if I wanted to call max value again, if I said something like, I can reuse max value, max val is equal to max value, right? And I pass in your array, right? What is the value of max val now? Hmm?
So you've assigned them both to the same thing.
No, I haven't, because max val calculates the maximum value of whatever that's inside of your array. So in this case, I copy, the second time I call max val, I copy all this, right, inside of my array. That's what I'm doing. Int array now becomes 10, 7, 5, and 11, right? Hold on. And then as we loop through, we figure out that the highest value is 11, and that's what gets returned out and gets stored into max value now. Yes?
So you're essentially, what that's doing is you're just using my array to tell that function what to do, and then you're calling that function back up there.
Whether it's my array or your array, it doesn't really matter.
Telling it what to do.
Well, no, I'm giving it values. So I'm not telling it what to do. I'm giving it values.
Okay.
I'm copying whatever's inside that array into the max value method.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing a copy.
Got it.
Okay? Yeah.
So if you call max value the first time, it will always pull the first array first?
Yeah, because I'm passing in my array.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this time I'm passing in your array.
So max
No, it's not holding anything. It's calculating, doing its thing, and returning back out. It's temporary. All the stuff inside of this thing is temporary. It doesn't get stored anywhere.
Okay. That's what was confusing.
Yeah. Okay? So this code is a reusable block of code that is temporary, right? Anything that's in here, as soon as I call it again, gets regenerated again. So for example, this integer max value here, this max value, which is inside of the max value method, is different than this max value. This max value is inside of main. This max value is inside of max value, right? Again, I did this on purpose to make sure you understand that these two things are different things. This max value lives and dies inside of these curly braces. And this max value lives and dies in these curly braces. Okay, and they're different things. Even though they're called the same thing, they're pointing to different memory locations. All right?
It'll call the one that you're asking it to.
There's only one thing I'm calling, max value. Right? When I'm calling max value, I'm calling the method max value. That's what I'm calling, right? All I'm doing is passing in an input. The input is the array that I'm passing in. That's the input. Then this stuff gets regenerated, all right? It gets kind of created on the fly. As soon as I call it, all that stuff gets created. And then the next time I call it, it gets created again. It wipes out everything. It's gone. It doesn't remember anything. It gets created again every single time, okay? All right, hopefully you got that. And again, I'm not trying to confuse you here, okay? That's not the point. I'm trying to show you more complex examples because you're going to run into this kind of stuff when we code. Last thing about methods before we continue. Parameter matching, okay? If I have my function and I take in a string and a double, it has to go in as a string and a double. It can't be a double and a string. Does that make sense? So my function takes in a string and a double in this case, whatever this my function does. But here I'm passing in a double and a string. That's incorrect because you're trying to pass in a double into a string and a string into a double. It's going to fail. It's going to fail. It never will figure this out. The code will not figure it out for you. It's going to just do what you're telling it to do, which is you're telling it that I'm going to pass in 2.6 into a string, and it's going to go, man, 2.6 is a double. What are you trying to do? There's a type mismatch. That's what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wrong.
Wrong. And hello is not a double. It's a string. It doesn't. You cannot convert hello into a double, so it's also going to be wrong. You must pass it in the order that you declare your method. That's very important. Okay. So that's method parameters. All right, guys. We're going to do more with methods, right? If you don't understand methods, again, I highly recommend you play around with Visual Studio to try some stuff out. We're going to do some of that playing around today. Okay, now to the real fun part, which is an intro to Windows Forms. And for this, we need Visual Studio. So please pull up your Visual Studio now. Okay?
You need a repo or anything for this?
We do. Right? And I'm just going to clean this up while you guys are doing your thing.
Is this called i7 then?
i7. But let's do this together, guys. Are you ready? Let's come to this point now. You're here in Visual Studio. Last time we've been dealing with a console app. We're not going to do a console app anymore. That's over. All right, we're not doing that. We're moving on. Something more complex. Okay? So now we're going to create a new project. Let's do that together, right? And instead of a console app, I want you to search for, if you scroll down, there's going to be another one called a Windows Form application. Okay, you can keep scrolling until you find it, but there is one that looks like this, Windows Forms app. The other one you can do if you really want to is type in Windows Forms at the top, and if you do that, you're going to see that there is a Windows Forms app that I want right here, this one, the first one, Windows Forms app. Okay? Are you with me? Before we move on, you need to do this. By the way, this is all on the PowerPoint. Worst case scenario. Okay? Windows Forms app. As soon as you find this Windows Forms app, I want to click Next. Okay? And we want to name this ICE7. ICE7. Okay? I want to click Next. And when you click Next, it's going to say that it's going to be .NET 8. This is okay. Leave it alone from what it is here and click Create. when you create the Windows Forms app, it's going to greet you with a completely different interface than you've seen before. Okay, it's going to do one of these. It's going to say, waiting for IntelliSense to finish initializing. You can continue working, blah, blah, blah. Just wait for a second. Okay? It's going to bring up this form that looks like this. Now, you'd be forgiven to think that you can move this form around. You cannot. You can't drag this thing around. This is a designer. What we have here, we're in design view. Okay? Design view is a place where you can add in user face items, all right, or controls. On the right, let's bring up Solution Explorer, please. So Solution Explorer should be pinned up on the right. On the left, you can see that there's nothing here, right? You have a data source that's here, and that's it. Let's pull up something else. If you go follow me here to View, right? And what I want to look for is, if I scroll down, there's something called Toolbox. Bring that up. Click on Toolbox. And I want you to pin it, all right? So here's the Toolbox. Give it a second. There it is. There's the Toolbox. The Toolbox has a bunch of stuff. If I open up the Windows Forms Toolbox, it has a bunch of things. Tons and tons of things, actually, right? Buttons and labels and a bunch of other stuff. Okay? That's what it has. Okay, are you with me? Anyone not with me? All right. So, Toolbox. The Windows form itself, if you press play right now, just try this out, press play. It'll actually pop up a window, right? It'll actually pop up the form. It'll compile and run your form. Look at this. Ooh, hey, look at this, an empty form. Ooh, right? What you're doing is you're making a Windows application, all right? Making a brand new Windows application. This is very valuable, my friends, because what we can do is we can make a tool for ourselves that we can use with Unity or something else eventually, okay? So. On the right, yes.
So that's just a visual representation?
This is just a design. This is just a design of what's inside the window. It will take some time. It will take some time when you first start off. But before we continue, I want to put this up on GitHub. And we know that we need to do this right now. Okay, so here inside of my developer PowerShell on the bottom, if you don't have it, you can go to View Terminal, please. And in here, before you do a git init, what do we need to do? You need something, right? What do we need before we do a git init? Well, no, we can do that in a second. But what do we need to do? If I'm going to initialize a local repository here, what do I need that's desperately important for Visual Studio especially? A git ignore. If you don't have a git ignore file, it will fail. It won't allow you to do things in here. So a couple ways to get that. One way is to go down here and add to source control. We've done this before, right? And if I go to add to source control git and I go to local only, right? And if I click on create like this, then it will create your repository for you, right? That's what it does. So actually what it did was, if I go to View Terminal, if I do that, and if I kind of look here and if I do a git status, you can see it says on branch master, nothing to commit. That's what it did. And I did that by going down here, remember? And adding to source control. That's what I did, way back down here, okay? You guys should know how to do this, all right? This is not like new.
Create path, I don't change anything when that comes up?
Yes.
Sorry, but PowerShell's not coming up.
View terminal
I don't
doesn't work?
change anything, I just create.
It'll, okay.
Press enter, 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 and see what happens. Try again. Go View terminal again. All right, the other thing we can do with Git is git log. And we can see that it added in a commit called add project files. That's what it did, okay? So that's what we did here with git log, so we have that. What we want to do now is, let's check out what this looks like in my folder. So if I go back to downloads, and if I go to Georgian, and if I look at i7, you can see that I have a .git folder, right? It's a git attributes file and a git ignore file. That's what it did when we just did all that, okay? Again, this is the exact same process that we used before, except we did it here, okay? Nothing different so far. Now, let's rename my branch. The way we rename our branch is this. We say git space branch, capital M, minus capital M and then main. That renames our branch to main. My friends, this is not new. You've been doing this for the last 7 weeks, right? So you should know how to do this. Git branch minus M main. Notice on the bottom right, it says main now. It's not master anymore, okay? Next, we need to create a repository online. Let's do that. So we're going to go to GitHub. And I'm going to make a brand new repository. First, I got to sign in.
I don't know what's going on with my window. It's not.
GitHub. All right, and I'm going to make a brand new repository. And it's going to go to Georgian.
And then the new branch name. So in this case, we're doing main. No, not in this case.
And the repository name is going to be called, for me, COMP1115 F2025 ICE 7. I'm going to make mine public so you guys can see my code. All right, that's what I'm going to do. But you would make yours private, okay? And include me as a collaborator. And then I'm going to click Create Repository. This is going to give me a series of steering instructions, steering, kind of like stuff for me to do, right? I've already done a couple of these things already. I've already done this, right? All I really need is this and this, okay? So I can actually copy those. I want to add a remote, just this part. Right, there's my remote. And then what I want to do is I want to push to the origin into the main branch. And now, if everything goes well, I push to GitHub. If I check my GitHub repository afterwards, if I refresh, you can see that I have everything that I've normally had before, which is this. This is what your GitHub repository should look like right now. And I have 2 commits, right? The first commit is add project files, and the second commit is add git attributes and git ignore. I didn't do an initial commit because I used Visual Studio to do that, all right? That's what I did. Okay. Now we're ready to go. We've added our first commit, and you guys are with me? My friends, this is not new. You need to get faster. I'm sorry, Zach, you need to get faster, right? So, because I need to move faster, and you guys need to move with me. So, let's take a look at the PowerPoint. So I kind of gave you a bunch of stuff in here. One thing is that we have a bunch of different kinds of UI controls that I'm going to look at soon, okay? A label, a text box, a button, a checkbox, a combo box, a bunch of stuff, okay? All of these controls, they're actually objects, okay? That's what they are. What we're going to be doing in the second half of semester is designing user interfaces, okay? And we're also going to use some code that we've learned so far, like methods and arrays and a bunch of other stuff, starting today, okay? So we're going to use, but we're going to, instead of using the console, which, let's face it, is pretty boring, right? We're going to actually use something that's real, like a user interface. I don't want to take you into Unity. We could do Unity. I don't want to take you into Unity because I want to go even lower than that right now, okay? Wallace is going to do some Unity with you next semester, right? But for now, we're just going to do this. So label, text box, button, checkbox, and a bunch of other stuff, okay? So user interface controls is what those are. So again, think about this as a library, and there's 3 things you want to think about. Oh, form is a graphical element. Okay, that's what it is. Think about it as a container. So if I go back to this whole thing here is a container. It contains controls. It contains controls and components. That's what it contains, okay? Right now, this form contains nothing. It doesn't have anything in it. If I run it again, you can see that it just has an empty form. Let's talk about the anatomy of a form for a second, okay? There's the title bar up top here. This is actual words you need to remember, okay? The title bar, right? There is the minify icon, the maximize icon, and the close icon. All those three things here, minimize, maximize, and close, are part of this form. So if I kind of do this, if I run it again, you can see just the form itself. I can minify, right? I can maximize, okay? And I can close, and that's functionality out of the box. You don't have to program that stuff, all right? It's all built in for you, all right? Now, I want to also tell you this. We're going to do some more stuff as we do this. I can disable all this stuff you just saw. I can disable the title bar. I can disable the minify button, the maximize button, and even the close button. I can disable all that stuff, all right? And we will later on, okay? But for now, we're going to use the form as it is here. On the left, you can see a toolbox, like we said, with all the possible things you can do here in the form. Some of them are controls, other ones are component. Components may not have a visual representation. Like for example, if I want to put a timer on the form, it will not have a visual representation, okay? Like it won't show up. You won't see the timer counting down. It'll be something that's on the form, okay? Let's also, let's collapse this and let's pull up common controls. We're going to work with these common controls for the most part in our course this semester, okay? That's what we're going to be doing. I'm going slow, my friends, because there's a lot to do today, all right? So I talked about all this. So there's a bunch of categories here. We have a bunch of categories like containers. There's a containers category with a group box, a panel, and a bunch of other stuff. These are containers that can hold controls if you want them. And this is great for organization. There's also menus. We can make menus, a menu strip and a status bar and all this kind of stuff. So if you want to make a little application with a bunch of menus and stuff, we can do that. Data will allow us to connect to a data source like a database or something else. Other components, like for example, like I said, a timer or a process or something else. We may do a timer later on. You can print your form. You can create a print dialog box that'll come up and print your form out, as well as other dialogues that exist here as well. Okay, what the heck is a dialogue? A dialogue is a form that comes up like this that has a title bar and a toolbar and all that stuff, but usually it asks you for a question. That's why it's called a dialogue. It dialogues with you, right? Are you sure? Yes or no, right? Okay, okay, cancel. All that stuff that you see, those are dialog boxes that come up. And there's also other ones that come up. For example, the color. If I want to choose colors, that's a dialog box that comes up and says, choose your color, right? And then you choose your color, and then you press OK, and the dialog box goes away. That's what that is. So we've been using these things nonstop. We have examples of Windows forms all the time. For example, this is a type of Windows form. Okay, if you think about it, the Explorer window, okay, has the same stuff. It has a title bar. It has, minify, maximize, and close. And in fact, all the stuff that you're going to see here that we're doing, kind of has that same aspect. Okay, next. So I talked about here how to create it. So this is all the stuff we did before. One thing is, what we're missing here, we've got the toolbox, but we're missing the properties tab. Let's get that going too. Okay, so the properties tab, right now you don't have it. Let's pull it up. So if I go to view, right? And again, what I want to look at is properties window here at the bottom, properties windows. So the property window pops up down here. It should pop up in this area here, okay? So the property window is interesting because whatever you click on, in this case, the form is being clicked on, the property window gives you context-sensitive information about this part right here. So the form itself is what we're looking at right here. And you can see stuff that, about the form. The form name, as an example. If you scroll down, it has things like the font. The font, that's the default font for the form. Different icons that represent the form and stuff, we can set that up. And if you look through here, it also has the minimize box. Do we have it or not? If I turn this off, take a look at this. If I turn off the minimize box, it becomes grayed out, right? If I put it false. And if I actually run this thing, you can see that when I run it, the minify box is not possible. I can't minify it anymore. I can turn that off. See that? Let's turn that back on. So there's the minify box, maximize and minimize, right? So you can turn those off, right? Maximize and minimize. There's also a minimum size, so I can make the form really, really small, right? but I can also make it a minimum size, so you can't make it smaller than a certain size in width and height. You can do that, all right? Again, you have to click on the form to make sure that you get that.
Yeah, and I see minimized box, but
Minimum size, and there's minimized box, right? There's also opacity. So if I change the opacity of the form, let's say if I make it like 50%, right? And if I run this thing, then you can see that the form is semi-transparent now, okay? So it allows you to do that as well. So there's your, opacity, okay? There are lots of controls here. If I want to make my form a certain size, right now it's 816 by 489, right? If I change the control handles, you can see that I can change the size of my form, the width and the height of my form to make it whatever I want by pulling these control handles right here. These little boxes, those are control handles, okay? So I can make my form anything I like, okay? The text at the top of my form, that's on my title bar, is right here. So I can change the text of my title bar to something like start form, right? Like this, start form, right? Or whatever you want, okay? And you can see that there are many other things here that you can do, all right? Questions so far about form? A form is a control. And notice that we haven't programmed a damn thing right now. All I'm doing is I'm using something that already exists. One thing I want you to know is this. There's something going on in the background that you don't see, right? In the background, code is being auto-generated and auto-updated when you do this kind of stuff. For example, when I change the size of my form, we have something called a form designer. Notice that there's a bunch of different files here in my application this time around, right? If I open it up, you can see that there are a lot of different files. If I click on the form designer, this one, form one designer, this one, if I click onto it, you'll see that there is another, I'm just gonna kind of close this off for now. You're gonna see that there's another thing here, all right, that shows you a bunch of stuff. I open it up, you can see that the form designer actually has information about the form that's in code, right? That's already there for you, okay? Things that you don't have to do yourself. It's already there. That's the form designer. And the form designer actually is changing stuff as you do it. Like example, I changed the size of my form to 854 by 474. You can see that, right? Okay, you have to wait till the break. I'm sorry. So then what I've done is the form designer, if I click onto that, double click onto it, you can see it opens up a separate tab, right? Don't monkey with this. Don't change anything here in the form designer. The form designer is basically auto-generated, okay? So we don't want to modify this almost ever, okay? Unless we want to fix something. Sometimes we might have to go in here to fix something. For now, I want you to think about the form designer as the back-end code for your form, how the form works, okay? So let's close this off. We don't want to change anything here. The other thing we have is a program.cs. We also have this. Let's pull that up. Program.cs is actually a little program thing with a main method. Take a look at that. And what it does is it has a couple of calls here, right? It has this application configuration initialize, and also an application run, and it calls this form one as the form that it's making, okay? That's what it's doing. Again, for now, we don't want to monkey with program.cs, okay? I'm just showing you how things are done, how things are made, okay? So this is good. We have our form. And again, like when I run it, still everything looks the same. If I want to make it smaller, let's see if it responds to making it small. If I make it like really small, so I take the form and I kind of do one of these, will it run this big? Let's say if I run this again, will it work? Yeah, it does, right? Here's my form, right? My form is also expandable, right? Because I've made it that way. If I don't want to make my form expandable, again, if I click on my form here and I go to the right, then there is an option. Let's take a look at some of these options. By the way, you can look at them in different ways. There's alphabetical, or you can look at it in categorized fashion. Categorized or alphabetical, okay? I'm looking at it alphabetical, right? So again, I can say the size grip is auto, start position, it tells you where it is. You can change this, right to left, padding, and so on. There's the maximize box, right? And if I scroll down, you can see that there's a bunch of different things here. Here's something, auto size and auto scroll, right? Auto size is false. It says auto size mode, grow only, right? And there's a bunch of other things here that you can kind of modify to stop things from changing, right? Okay, so just letting you know that there's a bunch of stuff here. If I don't want my form to be resized, I can change the minimum size and the maximum size so it's the same value, okay? So I don't have to have those resize handles come up. All these here are the things that we can do with our form. Example, I want to change the back color of my form. Instead of it being control, let's change the back color of my form to control dark. So now you can see the background color of my form is now this gray color, okay? Lots of control, my friends. So, okay. Questions around the form itself? Pretty straightforward? I'm going slow. I'm going slow. Yes?
For example, a form would be like if you're transferring files and you have that download bar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Transfer bars, that's a
Yeah,
form.
yeah. Everything's a form in Windows, right? All right, so this is cool. So let's go back to this. So we've done this. We've talked about these things. One more thing I want to add that we're missing here. I'm going to go back to the defaults for my form. By the way, undoing does remember everything. You can undo several times with your form to get back to what it's going to be like, right? Again, I'm in my back color is back to control. That's what I've done. And we have this toolbar, this toolbox. There's one really nice option as well that I need to put up right now, and it's kind of in a different order in the PowerPoints. I want to go to View, and I want to go to Other Windows, and I want to go to something that is Document Outline. See where it says Document Outline? Let's pull that up. Document Outline gives me this document outline right here, right? Here's the document outline. And what I want to do is I want to pin it, right? So then it looks like this. There's the toolbox up here and the document outline down here. The document outline tells you all controls that are on the form. Right now, you can see that the document outline only has the form itself. In the future, we're going to have other controls that we're going to add in, okay? So that's what the document outline is. So when you're working with Windows forms, I want you to have these four things open: the toolbox, the document outline, the solution explorer, and the this properties window. Okay? And why? Because all of these things are going to help us design the form the way we want. Okay? All right. Are you with me? No one's lost yet? Yeah?
The document outline will basically just show anything you've updated, kind of like
No, it'll show us any controls we put onto the form itself. Yeah, and the form. So notice the form is called Form 1.
Yeah.
Form 1 is a pretty ugly name, right?
Yeah.
Let's rename this thing. And the way we rename forms is you right-click on Form 1, and you want to choose Rename, or F2. And let's call this Start Form, like this, Start Form, okay? Start Form. Start form.
It's asking me if I really want to change it, because otherwise my file may become unusable.
Yeah, but in the same.
So I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
keep that form.
I did it, but it's fine.
Well, let's change it again. What if I made this to, if I change this back, so if I wanted to go back to what it was, right? So it was form1.cs. Let's change it again. So, I can rename it back to form1.cs here. Form1.cs. Oop, cancel. Form1.cs. That's what it should be, right? That's what it was? Form1.cs. Change it back.
I think it was maybe.
We have a problem, right? It does all this. It gives you something like that. It looks like this. It goes, wait, I don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 right? So what happens when we do this? What's like, how can we've messed up, right? Because this is the problem.
Don't touch it.
Well,
We have to rename it at some point.
you have to do something, right? So this is where it gets renamed. So
You put spaces when you rename it?
no spaces.
Okay, well, I put
Yeah.
spaces.
So let's rename this again. So if I rename this to something else, like Start Form, okay, like this, and it says to change it, again, if you see this weird call stack thing that comes up, and it says, why are you seeing this? All right, it tells you this, like, to prevent possible data loss before loading the designer, the following errors must be resolved, okay? This is a very common thing that you're going to see every single time. And why we've confused the form designer. So form 1, if I go to form 1 designer, right, and if you look through here into this thing, it's basically saying, you know, my name is form 1, right? That's what the name is. My text is start form. That's what I said, but the name is form 1, right? And then my class is form 1, right? That's what I did. I changed it all to form 1, right? And if I go to, let's go over to my program is trying to run form 1, right? But meanwhile, my my form is called start form, right? So I've messed around with it. So how would I fix this, right? Change this to rename, refactor rename, right? So if I was to do that rename thing here to start form, let's try this, right? And see what happens. So it says start form, right? And let's go back to my form designer.
No, mine's in there.
Start form, right? Hold on. I know we're going to start this over again in a second. Form 1 is just the name of the form, no problem, right? And let's go back to my design view. And what if I run it? Will it run, right? Will it actually run? And it says no, it doesn't run. And it'll give you a series of problems. It says type start form already defines a member called initialized component with the same parameter types. And you're going to think that you're broken. You know, we're kind of broken right now. Please forgive me, okay? Please forgive me. But I need to break you a bit, all right? If I don't break you, you're going to break on your own. And we got to see how this thing breaks and how we can fix it in a second, okay? So start form, we did that. We monkeyed around with the names, and it says my class is start form. And you know, one thing I want to do is if I want to view the code, right, as an example for start form, it doesn't work because it doesn't know what to do. So how do we fix this? Well, what about if we created another form itself? How do I make another form? Let's try another form by ourselves. If I go to i7, and if I right-click here, follow me, guys, please. Follow me, guys. Right-click onto i7, and I go to Add, and I go to New, and notice that in here there is something called Form. Look at that. If I click Form, and it'll say basically, here's a Windows form that comes up. Are you with me? This is important because you can fix yourself here. We're going to fix it, and we're going to delete the other one. All right. So here's Windows form. It's called Form, right? And I want to rename this to Form 1. Let's leave it at Form 1 for a second and click Add, right? So it says a file with this name already exists if I called it Form 1. So if I kind of click onto this, you see the design view. Hey, look at that design view again, right? But we also have this start form here that the design view is bugged, right? So what if I was to kill this start form? I can right click and delete it.
I got two of them now.
Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
So we're deleting the old one?
You can delete the old one.
I have my original.
Let's try this one more time. Okay, let's try this one more time. I want to make it. I want to add another form. Ready? Here's how we add another form. I want to right click, and I want to add a new form. Here we are. Here's the new form down here. Right? Form. And I want to call this form Form 2. Okay, let's do Form 2. Let's do this together, guys. Form 2. All right? Here we go. We got Form 2. There's Form 2. And we got Form 1. Okay? I want to kill Form 1, and I want to keep Form 2. By the way, your code will never run if we do this, by the way. Okay? Why? Because remember that program.cs looking for something else. Is looking for start form that doesn't exist right now. We're going to fix this. Okay? We're going to make it so that in the program file, we're going to change this so that it calls Form 2. Okay, that's what we want. Form 2, it does exist. We just made that form. But let's get rid of Form 1. Let's get rid of it. There we go. And if I go back to Form 2 and run it now, it's going to run just fine. Don't be lost. Don't be lost. This is
so far behind.
There's nothing to, we're not behind at all. We're not far at all.
When I did what you did, it created 2, but it was so when I renamed it, It
I know.
basically reset all my settings and went back to blank. And then when
It's
I
okay.
did what you did, it brought back my old one with the proper settings that I had. But it
I know.
won't run, and then I got
Let's
lost.
rename this form again. Okay, let's rename this form 2. We got to do this a bunch of times, guys, because you're going to run into these errors, and we got to do it together so we can get by this part. And we'll take a short break and come back and add some stuff. Okay?
Yeah,
Form 2.
I'm just not going to rename
Form
it
2.
all.
Let's no, you need to rename it. I want you to do it. Rename it. All right? This time, be careful with the .cs. Don't rename the .cs part. Just rename the form name itself. So change the form 2 to start form, like this. No spaces, start form. And it says, are you sure you want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. You're renaming a file. Would you like to perform a rename in this project to all references? Yes, we do. And what it does now is start form. Form 2 is actually called start form now. And if I was to run this thing, you're going to see that it still runs. It says form 2 at the top, but that's just the title bar. We can change that because if I go back down here with the text, we can change this to say whatever we want, which is start form. Okay? Are you with me?
Mine actually worked. Never mind.
I know it's going to work, right? So worst case scenario, listen, worst case scenario, if you bug your form up, what do? Make another one, okay? Make another one. In your program.cs tells you which form you're going to start with. Make sure you point to the new form, whatever that's called, okay? And then you're good, really, right? There's other ways we're going to bug up our form today. I'm going to bug it up a bunch of times on purpose. So that way you don't get afraid when you see these ugly messages that come up and go, your form is dead. And you're going to be, oh my God, what can I do to fix this? I feel my heart is pounding. My form is dead. I've lost all my code. You haven't lost anything. We can fix it. Okay, there's many ways to fix this problem. Don't worry. Okay. I think it's a good time to take a break and get some coffee and fix some people. So let's take a break right now.